Pawn shop employees of Reddit, what is something people think is collectible or worth a lot of money, but is actually relatively worthless? State quarters full set. So many grandmas think a full book with all the state quarters there are priceless. Worth exactly as much as 50x.25. Pawn shop employee here, just a friendly reminder that no one wants to buy your great-grandmother's china set. Jewelry. Especially diamond rings. Yeah, you paid thousands, it's worth considerably less. Longaberger baskets. The next state over there is a now-defunct basket-making company whose HQ is a giant basket. They were a thing for a while, similar to Beanie Babies, until the bottom fell out of the market. People were buying these things as a long-term investment, but they are practically worthless now. People think they still have value. Baseball autographs after like 1935. Willie Mays, Ted Williams, Mickey Mantle. Yeah, they signed thousands of things. Often lowers values of their cards. I sell things online, and one thing people never seem to understand is that just because you paid a certain amount for something doesn't mean it's actually worth anywhere near that. Pawn shop employee here. There's a lot, but one that stands out to me right now are watches. Brands like Fossil, Michael Kors, Citizen, etc. cost you over $100 at stores like Macy's, but we typically sell them for about $40, even in like new condition. When something goes from new to used, the value of said item goes down a lot. Not a pawn shop employee, but I flip things, and one thing that a lot of people misunderstand is comic books. They're usually not worth more than a couple bucks unless you go really far back, like 50s, early 60s. Even then they need to be in excellent condition. A few scuffs around the edges and a bit of fading can easily make a $1,000 book worth $50. Fine art. Every once in a while, someone finds an old master drawing, etc. in their attic, but for the most part it's mostly junk by amateurs. Also, just because family lore claims a painting is by such and such a person, without concrete documentation, that claim is worthless. Not a pawn shop employee, but I'll share what the guy I went to told me. I priced out some coins and a watch for my dad's estate, and the watch, even though it was in excellent condition and from 1905, was worth like $125. The coins were basically worthless. He told me go skip these across a pond if you want to get any enjoyment out of them. Not exactly this, but similar. I worked in a used bookstore for years. We offered cash and store credit for trade-ins. So many people couldn't grasp that if we are selling a book for $3, it meant we would buy it for way less than that. They'd haul in a box of trash expecting a grand payday. They also didn't understand that a book being a mega bestseller or on an Oprah list or made into a movie years ago made it less valuable for us. If 10 mil people bought the book in 2012, then 2 mil have probably already traded theirs in, and the other 8 mil still have it and aren't likely to buy more copies. No, you aren't getting $10 for the Da Vinci Code because we have 2 shelves full of copies selling for $6 each right over there. What is something people think is collectible but is actually relatively worthless? Internet points. Collectible items. Just because you Dale Earner 2-in-1 bidet and water bottle says it's collectible doesn't mean that anyone wants it. Auctioneer here. The Longaberger baskets and china. Both had their time in the spotlight, now they need their time in the trash. Very few dishes are worth any money anymore. Furniture at auction resale is a must. High-quality furniture for low prices. Most second-hand electric guitars are significantly less expensive than they are when brand new, even if it is a major brand like Gibson or Fender. People would get offended at the offers we would make them because they didn't understand what a retail markup is, and they didn't realize that most guitars lose 50% of their value the moment you purchase them. Swarovski crystal ain't worth shit. I've got an attic full of old Star Wars toys that I played with when I was a kid. Every time a new movie came out before Disney bought the rights, there would always be a huge uptick in toy sales. Some of the stuff I have from the late 70s and early 80s is worth a little, but I've heard all the later released toys are practically worthless, barring a few rare exceptions. The stuff I have might net a couple grand at best. Not the investment I thought it would be when I was younger. Pawn shop employee here. Get a ton of people bringing TVs in thinking they're going to get $100+, but the market is so oversaturated, you're most likely gonna get less than 50 even for your 60 TV. Fad toys like Beanie Babies that everyone thought would be worth a ton of money. If the thrift stores are full of piles of it, it is worthless. If the pawn shops are full of it, it's also worthless. If everyone thought it was going to pay their retirement, it's worthless. Clothing. I know most pawn shops don't sell clothing, but clothing is not worth what you pay for it once you remove the tags. Also, most clothing that you think is worth money is not. Most mall brand clothing that you pay $50 for will sell for about $5 per item on eBay, if it even sells at all. Don't even get me started on what those items are originally tagged. If you wear it once, the depreciation is probably 80% of what you paid for it or even more, and that would be for the higher end brands. Not a pawn store employee, but I flip things. Fish tanks are worthless. A $1,000 brand new fish tank is worth fuck all. Large tanks explode when they get old. Shit, even small ones explode. I used to flip computers, and people could not understand that their used broken computer is not worth the $500 they originally paid for it. I'm not a pawn shop employee, but I hacks a friend who was. Said that people kept bringing in old PCs. He hated it because these people kept thinking they were worth a lot because of the age. The only old computer he got that was actually worth something was a 97 20th anniversary Macintosh that he bought for just over $1,500. They sell now for over $2,000. Said it's the most expensive thing he has ever bought. Baseball cards. Sure, I have heard of that person, but it is the wrong year, the wrong brand, and it looks like it rode around in the spokes of a bicycle. Not a pawn shop employee though. Obligatory not a pawn shop blah blah. What kills me is when someone sees a single item, example megalodon tooth, online selling for a ridiculous sum, and assume all meg teeth are worth the same. 2 questions. 1. Is that just what it's listed at? No one will actually end up paying that much, and 2. Is that an especially rare tooth that makes it extremely valuable? People lose their minds when they see $. My cousin worked at this pawn thrift store in our hometown that was in the middle of nowhere. One thing that was always common were those old creepy dolls made with glass faces, real hair, etc. He's told me stories of people fighting over these dolls, but in the end they couldn't use them for anything. The dolls would be so old and fragile that even touching them was a risk of the whole thing breaking apart. Sure, you could collect them, but there were a lot of problems that got in the way of them being worth anything. Pawn shop employee here, pretty much anything that isn't guns or gold is almost worthless. Even most modern guns are mostly made of polymer, aka plastic. TVs especially. I know you paid $2,000 for your 50 plasma TV, but it weighs £1,000,000 and I can get a brand new 55 4K smart TV for $250 at Walmart. Things don't hold value. This job has given me such an appreciation for what matters and what doesn't. If they sell it at a pawn shop, it's worth a couple bucks. If they don't, it's garbage. The only things that actually have value are people and experiences. Anything from the Franklin Mint or similar companies. We would get so many porcelain dolls and collectible plates. Not a pawn shop employee, but I was into the used video game market for 9 years of experience. People often fluctuate games incredibly wavy a lot of the time. Resellers can scam you easily if you do not pay attention. If you are paying $20 for Super Mario Bros. On the NES because it's the first game and because it was on the NES, you're getting scammed. It is roughly worth $5 at most, no matter if it was with Duck Hunt or triple bundled with Duck Hunt and World Class Track, I believe. And you need to understand, most games that are loose, no box, no manual, just a card or disc itself, will lose a lot of value and be worthless. The only exception is the game. If it's the original Chrono Trigger on the SNES, then it's going to be sold highly and will have value. Normally, a lot of good solid RPGs from the SNES era will typically be hard to get cheaply, and understandably so. You'd be surprised, even, how consoles even get mixed up like this too. Yeah, the NES all had model 001 printed on them. Just because yours has it does not always mean it's the first model released. The fucking Charizard Pokémon card. Kids always came in asking if I had one. Thinking it was worth like a $1,000 or something, I sold them for about $10 to $50 for a while until the Pokemon rage died down. Now they're worth like $1. Remember, people? Worth and value are two different words for two different people, the salesman and the consumer. Edit. Most of these cards weren't worth nearly as much as they were. The shadowless ones that people keep asking about definitely did not come through the shop. There was only one card that I remember because two people basically fought in a bidding war over it at the counter. I think it sold for $150 to $200, but it was for their kids, so I bet they just wanted it for their children's sake. Maybe one of those shadowless first edition ones came through, and we lost a potential golden egg. Nobody really cared that much though, and smartphones weren't a big thing then, so no on-hand references. Not like I was getting that money anyways. Not an employee, but a friend of mine owns a stand in a big flea market and sells old gaming stuff. People assume since it's old, it's worth a lot. I'm talking like wanting $20 a game for Genesis games, not good ones either. Things like Sonic, Columns, Bean Machine, etc. Even worse is when someone comes in and expects you to pay retail for their stuff. If we buy the $20 thing that actually worth $20 and we sell it for $20, what is the point of doing it? We'll give you $12, $15 for the game and sell it for $20. Stop asking for retail, damn it. Not a pawn shop employee, but I know of plenty of people who collect old comic books, thinking they are valuable. Honestly, no. The classic ones worth something only have value from being from a time where comics weren't widely printed, as well as not many people thinking to take good care of them, so are in mint condition and valuable. Not a pawn shop's employee, but I do know that old pocket knives are pretty worthless. Most of them are still being made. The value of your grandpa's knife is that it was your grandpa's, not that it's old. Your grandpa doesn't mean much to anyone else. I had a guy and his girlfriend bring in a diamond ring and 2 gold chains. Then proceeded to threaten me when I informed him that his jewelry was in fact fake. Ended up getting criminal trespassing charges filed on him and a lifetime ban. Not from a pawn shop, but I'm kind of into Disney pin trading. I see people all the time trying to sell pins for crazy prices, and their only reasoning is that they're old. They also think that since they are so expensive they will hold their value. They range from $8 up to $25 plus for one pin. People don't realize how crazy mass-produced pins are. They all have a year on the back from when the pin was first introduced, but they could still be sold for years. The only ones that resell for at or above their MSRP are limited edition pins or ones that we only obtainable in small quantities. I have quite a few pins that are worth a decent amount, but they're all cast member exclusive pins that are like one of 1,000 or one of 500. I also have way more pins that are worth nothing more than $1 a piece. People confusing the merchant who needs to resell something and make a profit doing so with a collector who will keep the thing. No shit, the guy trying to make money isn't going to pay you very much. Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! And more TCG cards. Diamonds are often worthless. All those little ones on your ring are worth about 50 cents each. Some tips about pawning or selling your goods. Clean them beforehand. There's nothing worse than someone bringing in a microwave with layers of splashed burnt food inside. If somebody has to spend time to clean it, they will factor it into the price. Also, if it's clean, it gives the impression of being looked after. Please clean phones and computers inside and out. Reformat them if you're selling and if you think you may not make payments if you're pawning. If you think you may have trouble making payments, just sell the bloody thing and don't pawn jewelry if you're sentimental about it. Oh, and if you're buying from a pawn shop, don't be afraid to haggle. Their diplomas. Rick Harrison himself once told me my life is worthless. I thought I was worth at least $1,000. Maybe I should try the black market. Until very recently, I worked in a thrift store, which I'd argue is close enough that I feel qualified to weigh in here. Old newspapers and magazines, even of very historically significant events, are generally worthless. I threw out several newspapers about the moon landing and JFK's assassination throughout my year and a half at that job. People tend to think those were two of the biggest news headlines of that generation. The original papers must be worth a lot 50 years later. Well, they aren't. Because when JFK died and when Neil Armstrong set foot on the moon, Everyone in the world knew those moments were going in the history books, so everyone held onto those newspapers. Even today, there are still a ton of them out there, in very good condition, so they aren't worth much. All that to say, there definitely are some old newspapers that are worth a lot of money. But they're going to be the moments that we look back on as defining moments in history but weren't fully appreciated in the moment. For example, a newspaper about Coca-Cola being sold by its founder to a group of investors in 1919 recently sold for almost $7,000. That might not be considered a defining moment in history even today, but it's still worth more than any moon landing newspapers, because why the hell would somebody save that Coke newspaper for a century? Obligatory not a pawn shop employee, but I watched something last night about how people will try and sell old Beanie Babies for thousands when only one or two are worth that much. We sold my Nana's house a few years ago and emptied it out. My papa collected a few things thinking they were surefire investments for his family's future in 2 generations. The only interest we got for anything were his cameras, he loved photography, and Coca-Cola merchandise. Even then, they weren't nearly as valuable as he would have hoped. Big notable that was totally valueless. Avon soap bottles. I kept the guitar-shaped one for fun. Nobody gives a shit about those. Lmao. I tempted a cash for gold shop around a decade ago. Not really the exact same, but we did quite a bit of pawning. I brought a Trump-branded business shirt at an op shop, this was way before he was elected turnip-in-chief. It still had its $150 original price label on it, I got it for a sweet $12. The sad thing is it's a bloody nice shirt, well made, quality Egyptian cotton and a nice cut. It's my secret shame. Till nothing is valuable.